All right, so the Press Association of Jamaica made a call for post-cabinet briefings to resume. Days later, the government has responded and that they will resume shortly. So with Jamaica ranked 8th out of 108 countries in last year's World Press Freedom Index, how important are these post-cabinet briefings to our democracy? Damien Gordon, Assistant Lecturer of Public Policy, Political Leadership and Strategy in the Department of Government at UMona and President of the PAJ, and my colleague, Dion Jackson Miller, here with us. Good morning to you both. Welcome to Smile Jamaica.
Good morning to you.
Do you know why it was stopped, Madam President?
We haven't heard any reason yet. We hear they're restructuring, but it's been 6 months.
Right.
And after all, what it is a press briefing. After cabinet is held, the minister or ministers come and they brief the press on some of the important issues that would have been discussed as cabinet, and it's also used as a forum in which journalists do raise other issues. Yeah.
Right.
It's a press briefing. So, I'm not sure what's this big restructuring.
So let me ask you, what is the law, what's a policy, or what's the history when it comes to post-cabinet briefings? When is it supposed to happen?
Well, I think the briefings typically take place subsequent to the cabinet meetings. There have been a media fixture since the 1990s. I remember in 2007 when Bruce Golding had temporarily stopped the briefings. His excuse was that he wanted to restore the sovereignty or the supremacy of Parliament. So he didn't want to discuss cabinet matters with the media before those matters were discussed with Parliament. But as far as I'm concerned, I share Dion's concern that the discontinuing of the press briefings is concerning. What is more concerning is the fact that the Prime Minister has not provided a reason for the discontinuing of these briefings. Remember, in our kind of democracy, citizens have limited opportunity to really scrutinize government. Outside of an election, we're not really called upon that much. And it is a media that we normally rely on to fill that gap, to ask the tough questions, get the answers, probe the issues, and relay the information to us in a simple, clear manner.
Okay, so just remind the public the role of cabinet. So the ministers meet, and this is where executive decisions are made for the country. Just for those listening who won't really understand what happens at a cabinet meeting.
So
the types of discussions. What are the ministers?
So the cabinet is the highest decision-making body of the executive.
Right.
It's a policy-making arm of government. So they really make policies. They really green-light policies. They sign off on spending projects, etc. So many of the critical decisions that affect our lives as citizens are made at the cabinet level.
Okay, so it's important for us to get that information.
Definitely.
So the Prime Minister is saying when? We will resume shortly, meaning when?
Well, it was
3 months from now?
It was the Minister of Information that sent it out. And shortly is not a day of the week. So, I mean, I appreciate the response so far, but we'll wait to see exactly when this is going to be happening.
Dion, I understand what you're saying, but is the suggestion also that we're not getting news that we ought to get? Is this one of the reasons that you're saying?
One of the things I find interesting is how some people have responded by saying, but why are you calling for this? Because the PM is on social media all the time.
Right.
That's push communication.
Right.
That's them telling us what they want us to know.
And you can't,
and I've always said as well
question that
social media is ill-equipped to do the kind of analysis that is required of the issues. It's a lot of sensationalism, it's a lot of sound bites, it's a lot of bits and pieces, in-depth analysis that the traditional media normally does. Social media is ill-equipped to do that kind of analysis. So it's not a substitute for traditional media.
Of course, we're not saying it shouldn't happen, but I'm just saying that one form of communication doesn't negate the fact that this is another very important forum that we continue to need to have.
Forgive my ignorance, but who turns up at these meetings? Who do you speak?
You mean in terms of who leads them?
Right.
Traditionally, it's been the information minister.
Which is Mr. Reid.
In this case, when there are specific issues, for instance, if there's an important issue regarding transport, for instance, the transport minister may also come. But traditionally, they're led by the information minister. So over the years, we've had Darrell Vaz, Arthur Williams, Maxine Henry Wilson, Burchell Whiteman, Colin Campbell, Danny Buck, for instance, who have all very, very ably led the press conferences.
Let me ask you, what happens globally? I mean, are there other countries that take the same attitude to the post-cabinet meeting?
Most countries, because I'm sure you're familiar with Sarah Huckabee.
Every day.
Yeah, but I'm saying like across the world, like what happened? Are there countries that decide they're not going to have these?
Well, different countries do make their own different arrangements, but I think it is generally accepted that you need a regular forum in which the media can engage with the government.
Especially in a democracy, because I mean, you know the difference.
My very first question, I asked if you knew why. Do you have it? I know you can't think for the government, obviously, but do you have any reason that they just decided to stop this and not do it?
No, no. And obviously I wouldn't try to get into their head or speak for them, absolutely. I can say, though, that from almost the very beginning we had been concerned with the fact that there was a lack of regularity. So even when they were being held, you would say, hold on, 2 weeks has gone and we haven't had a post-gab. It's been 3 weeks, we haven't seen a post-gab. So there was a pattern of irregularity even before they stopped.
Yep, so the quarterly briefings and the different press conferences, for whatever reason, that's not good enough in your eyes?
You know, one of the things, Neville, is that I think people think that these things are a lot more extensive than they are. It's not that we have the Prime Minister for half a day or a whole day, you know. It's usually something like an hour and a half. So, and quarterly really is not a big ask, you know, to ask for the PM to engage with the press.
And besides, it's not any additional expense per se. The minister is responsible for information, and I don't think it will cost them. And I don't see how this would be perceived as negative. It's beneficial to those who are directly involved in the engagement, as well as citizens who will benefit from the information that is shared. So I don't see any reason why they would not hold these meetings as was normally the case in the past.
So I'm sure they're all watching now. They're saying, boy, they're at me and on me again. What's the next step?
Well, as I said, shortly is not a day of the week. So we'll wait to see if we're going to see a specific time frame. We're going to be keeping a close watch on this. We'll give it a couple of weeks and then we'll stay on it.
Yep. Okay. I started in the opening, I mentioned we were ranked at number 8. That's great news.
6.
Or number
6 up from 8.
Yeah, 6 up from 8. That's great news.
It is.
And why are we different? What happens outside of what we're talking about? Why are we different?
One of the things, when you look at other countries, including in the region, you see actual physical threats and violence against journalists. You have, for instance, in the Philippines, where the president there has, you know, told journalists they're not exempt from assassination. You have other countries in which, look at the United States, where the president regularly refers to the media as enemies of the people.
And where are they ranked, Dion?
They're way below
way
us,
down.
and in fact, they've fallen since Mr. Trump has come into office. They've fallen in the index. So you have that issue of intimidation, of hostility. I mean, try to imagine one of our political leaders on a platform calling TVJ or CVM enemies of the people, and you know, we don't have that culture. We're not perfect. We do have lots of problems still, but remember, the ranking is a comparative ranking. So you're looking at what pertains in Jamaica compared to what some of our colleagues elsewhere are facing, where you have journalists being killed, you have journalists disappearing. In Malta, a famous investigative journalist was killed the other day when a car bomb was targeting her because of the work she had been doing in exposing corruption. So when you look at the atmosphere and the environment in which we work, really there's a paradigm difference in terms of what some of our colleagues have to deal with.
I think we as citizens rely on the media. There are a large number of people who rely on the media for zoning into the issues and providing that critical analysis and telling us what are the implications of government policies for our everyday lives. So there's a large number of Jamaicans who rely on the media for that. When you take the media out of the equation, it creates an absence of that mechanism to hold government accountable.
Madam President, not having a post-cabinet meeting would have anything to do with our ranking either way?
Again, remember, it's a comparative issue, so it's not that, and we've been careful to say this, we're not saying that there have been no avenues to engage with the government. We're just saying this is an important avenue that needs to be resumed. So again, it's in the context of what is happening
elsewhere. And regularity is important also, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But the government has a right to say we don't want to.
I don't know if right comes into it there. You know, the government has a responsibility and a duty to engage with us. This is something that has been held over years, as Damian said, and across administrations, PNP and JLP. So first, personally, for us, it's unacceptable. If you're going to come and say, we're going to stop it, we are going to vociferously protest that.
Well, Minister Reid, I hope you are watching. The importance of post-cabinet briefings. Assistant Lecturer of Public Policy, Political Leadership and Strategy at UWI-Mona, Damian Gordon, and President of the Press Association of Jamaica, the great colleague Dion Jackson Miller. I have to ask you, what's it like being on the other side of the interview?
I prefer that side.
You like this side? All right, call me
I know, right?
It's a pleasure having you, and we really hope that you know, that the government will respond, not with shortly, but next week.
There you go.
There you go.
All right.
All right.
Marketing your craft, folks. Our Glean Up Pick next. Soon come.